I'm the Chief Executive of Winning Scotland. My first board role was Social Enterprise Scotland, where I became the Vice Chair, and I'm now a Trustee of Sacro. I joined them both within a week of each other, and I remember being asked, do you think that's too much? And I was like, no, it's fine. I think it depends on the cycles. At some points the cycles match, which is not great when I've got my own board cycles and there's a Sacro board cycles, but some years they sync up quite nicely so that there's a gap in between. Because of the way the board works with Sacro, no one person, apart from the chair, is expected to carry too much weight. So it's manageable as long as I plan my time. We've also moved to doing I'm on the audit committee for Sacro, so we've moved to doing all those online, which is really helpful. So I can just slot it into my day. And the board meetings, we tend to try to do hybrid. So if there are any times when I can't go along in person, I've got this fancy kit, so it feels like you're in the room, even if you're not. So it's fine, but it has made me consider that probably I wouldn't do more than one board position in my current job, because I want to be able to devote enough time to both of them and not feel like I'm stretched too thin. This is the first board I've been on that's had committees. My board at Winning Scotland doesn't have subcommittees, and Social Enterprise Scotland didn't. We have 3, and we were kind of suggested for different boards. It was a mixture of us saying, oh, I'd like to be on this one, and what was needed. My official committee is the Finance, Audit and Business Development one. And when I spoke to the then chair, we felt that I had a lot to add around the business development component, and I had a lot to learn around audit. And I thought it would be really good for my development, because also on the subcommittee were people who were much stronger in the audit side than I was. It is like being on a mini board, essentially. So we meet ahead of the main board meetings, we get papers, and we prep for that in the same way. It's obviously much smaller, so I think there's maybe 4 people on it, and the exec team are there to support. And it feels that's when you can get down to the nitty gritty. And I think depending on what subcommittee you're on, that's when you get to understand the more day-to-day workings of the charity. On the main board, we have 2 hours a quarter, maybe 3 hours a quarter, depending on what's going on. You can't get into the detail there. It's very high level. It is governance. It is strategic. It's what we're supposed to be doing. But sometimes I feel for the main board that you could be on the board of any organisation. You could just swap out some numbers and swap out some names. Whereas when you're in the subcommittee, that's when you get to see the whites of people's eyes and you get to hear more about the services that we're delivering. So it really adds to the experience. It doesn't feel like a lot of responsibility, but when we go to the board, they trust that we have done our due diligence on the bit of our committee. And similarly, we look at the other subcommittees and know if they're coming with a recommendation, they've done work in a similar way that what me might have done it. It's a evolving process. And I think that's the other thing I've learned about being on a board. The board is the people, and the board that I joined in at Sacro 2.5 years ago is quite different, literally different. A lot of people are different, but also the way that we do things are different, and the way decisions are making, probably in another 2.5 years it would be different again, depending on what was going on. So it is this organic group that feels different depending on the people that are on it, and also depending on what stage your organisation's at. If your organisation is about to go through a merger, it would feel quite different than if you've been business as usual. So being on the subcommittee and the board just gives you both different perspectives. I'm not convinced that having boards is the best thing for the sector, but given that's what we have just now, it is important that charities have on their board people who they're supposed to serve, or they include their voices in some way. And it's important that decisions are being made from a variety of perspectives. And I think that's one of the reasons I have been useful on boards, because I have a wide range of experience. I call myself a jack of all trades. I know a little bit about a lot of things. So sometimes I can ask that question. I don't know the answer to, but genuinely I'm thinking, well, what about this from something else? And that's helpful. The third sector in particular carries so much weight in this country, in this economy. We are picking up all of the pieces that are falling down the cracks, and we are helping all of those people. And boards will help decide what is the strategy for the organisation. How are we going to do that? And in this particularly competitive funding environment, boards and management teams are having to make really tricky decisions about what they carry on doing, and that usually means they have to stop doing something else. And if you are on a board, you can have your say in what direction the charity goes and how they decide to spend their money. And if you're not at that table, then your voice isn't being heard. But it's not just about you, it's all the people that you know that you represent that maybe don't feel able yet to join a board. Or the other thing is that boards are not always accessible to people. Often they are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. There's a required level of literacy when you get a board pack this big. Now, not all board packs are that big, and it's something, again, I've worked with boards to try and say, well, what information do your board actually need, and can you give them that in the way that's really easy and accessible for them? Because you're automatically cutting people away, because even if they qualify to be on your board, they might not feel comfortable sitting with all that information and then thinking of good questions to ask. So there's lots to change about the way that we do boards at the moment, but a good first step is to get the right people around the table. Boards are very keen to say they're diverse, and then they create systems and processes that mean that it's the same kind of people that feel comfortable applying. I have been in the room where people's lack of experience on boards has counted against them, and I think, well, how are they supposed to get there? I say this as someone whose charity was founded and chaired by a knight of the realm, but if that's the most important thing to you, that you have sirs and ladies and dames around your table, then like that's okay, but be honest about that, because again, you're cutting people out. So there's ways of having both, of making sure that you've got people who've got the networks that you need access to, for example, but that you're also including other people. And it's really important that in the boardroom on the day, everyone is equal. I think we look at numbers like how many women are on our boards, and we forget to account for the fact that actually most of them are privately educated or work in finance or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying either of those are a bad thing. We don't look at intersectionality. So have we got disabled people represented? Social class, like we know that someone's accent is a huge decider of whether or not they'll get put through, whether it's through regular recruitment or board recruitment. So we're basically saying that anyone who comes from particular postcodes, unless they've managed to train themselves to code switch so that they can speak differently in different environments, we're cutting them out. I do see this as well. People from diverse backgrounds get a board position, then they're really keen to keep it. Like they want to. So what happens is they assimilate, and then you end up with someone who looks different or sounds different, but who actually is then learning to act in the same way that everything has always been done before. So we've got to create enough flexibility in the system that it can afford to be shaken up a little bit. And it comes back to a point about diversity is difficult. When you bring in diverse teams, it's much harder to manage. It's much easier when everyone just agrees with each other. So we have to be realistic with CEOs, with executive teams, with chair people, that if you say you want to be diverse on your board, things will take longer. You will have more arguments. You might find that people don't enjoy it as much, but the results should be better. And actually, especially if you're in the third sector, or even if you're a public company that's got customers, like why would you not want all of those kinds of people represented? So it's worth it, but it's not easy, because sometimes what people do is they recruit diversely, find it difficult, and then go, that didn't work, and then just go back to what they were doing before. And it's not that it didn't work, it's that they didn't do it properly. I would ask what induction process they had. My first trustee role was a membership organisation that you could put your name in a hat, and if they had the right number of people, you got on the board. And luckily, that's what happened. So there was no process. And I had never been on a board, so I didn't know what to expect, and actually got to maybe the second board meeting and thought, I don't know if I'm getting anything out of this, and I don't know if I'm giving anything to this. I think if I didn't turn up, nobody would notice. And I think then moving to an organisation like Sacro, where there is a proper induction and there's support. At Winning Scotland, we've got board buddies to try and make sure that people feel that they know what they're doing. So I would have gone back and said, how will I know if I'm doing a good job? What do you need from me? And then I would have been able to make a better call on whether or not that was something that I wanted to do. I joined my first board really for marketing purposes. I wanted my organisation to be more well known, but I would have wanted more support, I think. I can see both sides of the argument. I think the argument in favour comes back to that point on diversity. When I look at some of my friends who are in minimum wage jobs, to ask them to take half a day out, and some of them they couldn't take half a day out, it'd have to be a whole day off, and not recompense them for more than travel is, or if someone's got kids and they need a babysitter in the evening, if their meeting is in the evening, it's putting an extra barrier in people's way. I do also think that as a CEO who uses her board quite a lot, none of them would do it for the money, but it would be lovely to be able to offer people recompense for their time. Yeah, I think that is definitely something we should be considering. I think there is a conflict of interest to consider, but the charity staff are being paid and we manage that. So there's got to be something, I think, because otherwise we'll end up with the same people on this roundabout of being a board, and actually then you're not learning anything. My advice would be, if you're a human being but who cares about something, and there's a charity that you care about what they do, then you should go and speak to the chief executive about being on the board. And it might be that they have cycles of recruitment, or it might be that they do things on an ad hoc basis. But I think that we can all do more than we think, whether it's volunteering for the parent council or volunteering to be on a big national board. That's the beauty of the communities that we have. If all you do is turn up prepared, so you've read the papers and you've thought of some questions that you might want to ask, that's it. That's all that's expected of you. It's not more than that. Now, you might end up doing more, or you might end up thinking that you've got something else to contribute, but really, your job is to read what you have to read, go along and have a good conversation with interesting people who also care about something that you care about and who maybe you wouldn't meet in the course of your day-to-day life, and then trusting the executive team to go away and do the things that you've discussed. I don't think there's anything to lose if you get the right fit.